All right, so in this first chapter, we're going to be talking about the history of the family sciences as a discipline, how family science, family and consumer science has moved through the different eras of history from its beginning and its founding. So we'll move through the progressive era and then through how the discipline has changed based on what's going on historically and culturally. It's interesting to see today how things are happening in our culture and then how our discipline of family and consumer sciences is responding to all of the different things that are going on in our society today. So, to start off, family and consumer sciences, we'll call it FCS because that's easier and quicker to say. It has the mission has always been to address these issues, things like industrialization, immigration, urbanization, um, health concerns, based on individual and family life in the community. So when you think about your history classes and what's kind of happened from families moving from a farm, rural kind of setting into cities when the Industrial Revolution was happening and manufacturing jobs became much more prevalent, so rather than living out in the country on a farm, people were moving into cities and had different types of lifestyles. And then how did that affect families? So FCS responded to those changes and the needs of all the different stages throughout history. So it used to be called home economics, but the mission of this home economics or FCS has always been to improve living standards for individuals, families, and communities. So there are lots of different categories that kind of fall under FCS, and we'll talk about some of the different kind of branches of FCS. Um, and even today, it continues to examine the challenges facing families and the social trends, the health concerns, economic things, um, and how that affects families and the way that they function and trying to improve quality of life. So we don't just study these things for our own benefit, just for the sake of studying it. The whole purpose of studying family sciences is to help families to improve quality of life through research and then implementing those things into actual policies and programs. So that's the practical side of it. Um, so the primary goal of family science is discovery, and then so research, and then verification, and then applying that knowledge. So you're probably familiar with the family science aspect of it. Maybe you're thinking as far as FCS goes, it's some kind of psychology or social work or something like that. But there's actually a lot of other areas that can fall under FCS. So we're going to talk about food and nutrition, hospitality, textile and apparel, interior design, housing, education, and extension, and then family and community services, as well as the early childhood and human development and the that kind of early childhood education aspect of it. So it's a really broad discipline that encompasses a whole lot of different categories that could fall under this. But each one of these really can contribute to that main goal of improving life, improving the quality of life for individuals, families, and communities. So we use interior design as just one example of this. So you might think interior design, okay, that's just, we want to make people's houses look pretty. Well, okay, that's nice to have a pretty house. But when you think about the practical side of that, there's also, other types of interior design that could make their home functional for somebody who has become disabled. So that would be a whole other aspect of interior design that you might not think about. But that to a family that suddenly one of their members of the family is in a wheelchair, like those kind of design aspects actually would really improve their quality of life. And it's not really just about what paint color you're choosing, but it's about being able to get around your home. And if someone in your home has had a life situation where things have drastically changed and they find themselves in a wheelchair. So um, there is merit in all of these different categories. and it absolutely contributes to this whole mission of improving quality of life. So that's the basic idea behind taking these classes on family and consumer sciences. So the history of our family and consumer sciences starts with Ellen Swallow Richards. So she is known as the founder of FCS. So here's a few facts about her. She was the first female to go to MIT, which is a very prestigious engineering school. It's a huge deal for a woman to be admitted into MIT. Some of the struggles that she had in her time as far as kind of pushing against the male dominated field at MIT and being able to get her education, which was very important to her. And not only just getting her own education, but then also turning around and using that to teach others was something that was really important to her. So here's a few other things about her. I don't necessarily need to read all of these to you, but basically she started this association, which was the American Home Economics Association, and then that later turned into the Family and Consumer Sciences as we know it today, the AAFCS, which is the American Association for Family and Consumer Sciences. So she really was the founder of our field and kind of bringing it all together, all these different categories that we just talked about on the last slide and how those things go into improving life, the quality of life for families, individuals, and communities. So we can learn from her story how historically the things that she was faced with were shaping the FCS discipline. As families were moving from the farm to the city, and that's the stage of American history that she was in. All of those household tasks that people were used to doing on the farm work kind of had to be changed. And FCS was the answer to kind of help people learn those basic life skills. And so we started to see them being implemented then into the public school system. So that's where like home ec classes kind of first started, was with Ellen Swallow Richards and her association of trying to get home economics taught in the schools. So if you think about the basic life skills, and maybe you took a home ec class when you were in high school, they've kind of evolved a little bit even now to kind of get away from the basic life skills as far as like cooking and sewing and things like that. But something that we're going to be discussing during this class is, are we hitting the mark? Are the students that are graduating from these from high school having taken a home economics class, which in a lot of places they are required, do they really have the basic life skills that they need to be prepared for living independently? So that's something that we're thinking about. How could we improve that? Are there things that we're missing the mark on? Are there things that maybe we need to do a little better about? Or are there things that, like, yes, I learned that in home ec and I still use it and I'm so glad that I learned that. So it's something to kind of pause and think about your own life and how were you prepared when you went out on your own, or maybe you haven't gone out on your own yet, and what do you think you will need to know to be able to really be able to live independently and have those basic life skills. So then we get into land-grant universities. So this was also part of the history of the family and consumer sciences. So the Morrill Act of 1862 established land-grant universities. So the goal basically was there was all this land and the government was trying to help put it to good use. So they wanted to extend educational opportunities that promoted agriculture, industrial, and domestic economy, or home ec. So the federal government thought it was important that people have these more practical skills. So it wanted to kind of infuse into the academic world also these practical life skills. So that's where land-grant universities came from, and a lot of them are still functioning today. So the goal was to incorporate agriculture, industry, domestic life skills. So that's why it's important for family science, because a lot of those categories that we mentioned before are going to fall under those. So the land-grant universities also really helped propel our field of being able to bring more of those practical educational skills to people. So rather than just learning about math and writing and science, then we're also going to be learning about farming and home economics and nutrition, and all of those basic practical life skills. So we're going to end with the symbol of the AAFCS, which is the Betty lamp. It was adopted in 1926. They decided the Home Ec Association at that time was what it was called, needed a symbol, and they were going to use this lamp. And so it comes from a German phrase, which is to make better. So the Betty lamp was used in colonial times, and it just symbolizes our profession as far as family and consumer sciences, our goal as with education and leadership and being able to not only just research these things for ourselves, but then to share that knowledge and be able to help individuals and families to be able to implement the things that we're learning. So the lamp just kind of symbolizes being able to spread that enlightenment as far as research and the things that we'll be studying in our different family and consumer sciences fields, and then applying that and being able to share that knowledge with others to help improve their lives. So there's a lot more of the historical details and things like that in chapter 1, so make sure that you read through your chapter carefully. I didn't cover everything in this lecture, so you definitely want to go through your textbook, but that's a basic overview of the history and the purpose of family and consumer sciences.